Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The supermarket giant Tesco is at loggerheads tonight with Unilever, one of Britain's biggest suppliers of branded foods and goods. It's understood that Tesco has refused Unilever's demand to raise prices on a range of goods by around 10%. The demand was said to be prompted by the falling value of the pound following the EU referendum. Unilever has now apparently stopped deliveries to Tesco, and the supermarket is running short of a range of branded foods and goods. Our business editor, Simon Jack, has more details.
Out of stock, Marmite, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Persil, some of Britain's best-known brands have been withdrawn from Tesco's website tonight as the UK's biggest retailer refused to accept a 10% price increase from the giant supplier Unilever.
Retailers and suppliers fall out all the time, but industry sources tell me that this is of a different order of magnitude. The country's biggest retailer to fall out with its biggest supplier marks a new front in a perennial price war some say has escalated because of Brexit.
This is Unilever's justification for the higher grocery bill. The value of sterling has fallen 17% against the euro since Brexit. That means Dutch company Unilever is seeing revenues from UK sales fall, so they're upping the price in pounds and pence to compensate.
We have seen the pound fall as a result of the Brexit vote, and obviously as a lot of food products are imported, this is putting pressure on suppliers, and eventually something will have to give, and we'll eventually may see some of these sort of cost increases coming through to actual prices on supermarket shelves, which will be bad for the everyday average sort of British consumer.
It was just last week that the boss of Tesco told the BBC that price pressures were building.
There are some pressures. Commodity prices, exchange rates will bring some pressure into the marketplace, and historically that has seen prices rise. But I stress our approach at Tesco is to work ourselves and with our suppliers to try and offset those pressures through productivity and other things so that prices don't rise.
Well, that working together appears to have stopped working. In a statement tonight, Tesco hoped the dispute would be resolved soon, but until then, shoppers may find a few items on their shopping list are missing.
Simon, can we just put some of this pricing row into perspective? Make sense for us of the kind of context of the falling pound and the Brexit uncertainty. How does that fit in?
Well, let me first say, Hugh, that it's not just Tesco who are having this problem with Unilever. All of the major grocers were hit with this price demand from the Dutch company. About 3.5 weeks ago, and they've been mulling out how to respond. And it's very interesting that Tesco have chosen to call their bluff, if you like, because Dave Lewis, boss of Tesco, used to work at Unilever, so no one knows more about their pricing and what the pressures are at Unilever than him. And I say call their bluff because a lot of the retailers are saying, look, there are price pressures here. Obviously the pound has fallen against the euro and against the dollar, but some of this stuff is made in the UK. So trying to blame across the board price increases on the Brexit and on the fall in the pound is sort of trying it on. And what's going to be very interesting to see is how many of the other supermarkets who are going through the same process at the moment will either fall in behind Tesco or think to themselves, actually, Tesco not being able to stock Marmite, not being able to stock Persil, it's a pretty horrible place for them to be. Maybe we'll let them sweat it out. So it's going to be interesting. But like I say, a lot of them saying, we acknowledge that there are real price pressures. We think the way Unilever has gone about this is wrong, but these price pressures are real and we may see more of it in the days and weeks to come.
OK, Simon, thanks very much. Simon Jack, therefore, is our business editor.
When Brexit becomes about Marmite, you can be pretty sure it will start to hit home like never before. This evening, the product emerged centre stage of a row between a supermarket and a supplier over the strength of the pound. Major household brands are running low at Tesco following a row with Unilever. The Anglo-Dutch company is believed to have demanded a 10% rise due to the falling value of the pound and halted deliveries to Tesco when the supermarket refused to pay more. Well, Chris Cook is with me now. Ice cream at Dawn's. It's not just Marmite, Chris, but how big a deal do you think this is?
Well, this is a very big deal because it's about the single most important thing that's happening in Britain at the moment, which is the performance of sterling in the market. So it's gone through this enormous double-digit fall against everyone. since the referendum. We're now on a trade-weighted basis, that's to say, against all of our trading partners. The pound's at a historic low, and this is going to be the fundamental fact of life for a bit. It's really important to remember that what this effectively means is that prices and incomes in Britain have fallen relatively to prices and incomes in the rest of the world. So this dispute between Tesco and Unilever is really about who bears the burden of that, Tesco, Unilever, or the customer at home.
But we're always hearing that actually a weaker pound can be very good for exporters, certainly.
That's absolutely true, and we may look back at this moment in 10 years' time as being the critical moment when Britain changed the way that its industrial model worked and our exporters sort of took off. But it's important to remember one really big thing. That's been true in the past in Britain because our big devaluations have generally been because they've come at the end of periods when we've had over-tight monetary policy. So the Wilson devaluation, the crashing out of the ERM in 1992. So they've come with effectively big loosenings of policy. This devaluation is being driven by the fact that investors don't have as much confidence in Britain and don't want to hold as much sterling-denominated stuff as they used to. So it's quite a different sort of beast. And you can think of it almost that if they were right to have less confidence in Britain as a trader than they did, then it will be harder for us to do it. If our exporters are able to monopolise and to take advantage of this change in sterling, sterling will rise back up again.
Right. Thanks for that. We're going to talk to Lord Christopher Haskins, the former head of Northern Foods. He joins us now live from Hull. Lord Haskins, thanks for your time this evening. We know that these sorts of rows emerge quite often between a supplier and a supermarket. What makes this time different, do you think?
Because, first of all, there's been a huge build-up of tension between the brand companies and the supermarkets for years and years and years. The supermarkets don't like selling brands who determine the rules. Secondly, you have this enormous war within the supermarkets between the discounters and the Tescos of this world, so the pressure is there. Thirdly, you've got the online tension, which is affecting the supermarket business generally, at any rate, and people don't want to go to supermarkets as much as they did. And then finally, you get Brexit, which throws a huge wobble that undoubtedly what Unilever is doing is justified in terms of the economics of it, but Tesco is worried that Aldi may not follow suit. They will have to follow suit because these costs as a result of devaluation are too big for any company to carry.
So your sense then is who is going to emerge from this standoff as the winner?
Nobody. They're all going to lose. The Unilevers are going to have to suffer a little bit because the premiums they've got for their products won't be as big as they could be. The Aldis of this world are going to have to put up their prices. The relationship between the Aldis and the Tescos is going to be the interesting one. There is oversupply in the market. This is exacerbated then when you get a huge price increase like this.
Of course, if the pound is weak at the moment, this could be a temporary blip. I mean, there is every chance, isn't there, that this could just level itself out again and we won't see these prices high for long.
I think it's very unlikely that that will happen. I think that the pound has probably been overvalued even before Brexit, that the pound is now getting to its proper level. I suspect it's going to go below its proper level and that there's going to be a serious problem for inflation in 6 to 12 months' time.
So what are you saying in terms of the British shopper and the impact it will have on us now?
I think it will bring people, bear in mind I'm a Remainer, it'll bring back to reality people the consequences of leaving the European Union. It will certainly realise that whatever benefits there may be, there will be no economic benefits for the consumer as a result of what's happening.
I guess, you know, as you've said, you were a staunch Remainer and people on the other side will be quick to say don't jump to these sorts of conclusions. But in terms of what it means for our shopping habits, I mean, it doesn't mean we're never going to have Marmite on the shelves again, does it?
No, not at all. That's where Unilever will win, because despite the fact that people may grumble about paying more for Marmite, they will pay more for Marmite, and that's what the strength of good brands are. But then the people who pay more for Marmite have got less money to pay on something else. So it will affect shoppers, behaviour in a substantial way. And the argument is which are the product areas which will survive and which are the ones which will do badly.
So tonight we're looking, as Chris explained, principally at Tesco and Unilever. You think this is going to be, what, a pattern repeated throughout supply chains and throughout supermarkets?
Oh, inevitably. I mean, Tesco happened to be the biggest, but I mean, Sainsbury will be facing the same problem, the same tension with the Unilevers and with the Nestlés, and we'll see how this battle works out. And the interesting point is how the discounters, who are apparently prospering at the moment, how they're going to deal with this situation, because they'll have the problem too. They'll have to deal with these price increases.
When you say price increases, what would be your estimate in terms of the increase on a family shop?
Well, the indication is that what I see is the Unilever want to put their prices up by 10%. Well, if Unilever want to put their prices up by 10%, it's unlikely that the impact on price inflation going forward is going to be less than 5%, something like that. The agricultural commodity products work in a different way, but I would have thought that we're looking for food inflation of 5% in about 12 months' time.
At what point do you think this becomes hard politics? I think it was HSBC who said last week the pound is now the de facto opposition. If you see this in terms of Theresa May's comments or statements about pretty much a hard Brexit in March, do you expect her to modify that language or to change a date or to row back, or is that now set in stone?
I think that's a big question, that the politics seem to have overtaken the economics in the last 10 days. The economics may be hitting back now. The moment the great British public realises that there's a real cost to pay for Brexit, then the government will have to take account of that. And I suspect in the middle of next year, that's exactly the situation we're going to be in. There's going to be some sort of a crisis, and the politicians who want Brexit, never mind what, are going to have to think again.
You know the inside story of how a supply chain works. I guess I'm expecting a lot of people will be quite surprised to hear that Marmite was imported, or any of the other products that aren't made here. I mean, do you think we'll just start buying more locally now?
Well, there's a limit to what we do. We've always been big importers of food. At the moment, 40% of our food is imported. You can do a little bit in terms of improving domestic production, but I mean, that could have happened at any time. There's no particular reason why it should be strengthened because of now. You know, like the doctors, we suddenly say we need 1,500 extra doctors. Well, we could have had 1,500 extra doctors 5 years ago, but suddenly because of Brexit, we want them. I don't think that's going to make a change. There are fundamental issues, structural issues, which will not go away by a knee-jerk reaction to leaving the European Union.
Lord Haskins, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.